Canada's government and world role. Although Canada and the United States have a great deal in common, the history, politics, and cultures of these two countries are distinct. As you have read, the United States fought against Great Britain to win independence. Canada, on the other hand, broke away from Great Britain slowly through political means. Today's Canadian culture and political landscape is a result of many years of competition and compromise among the native peoples of Canada, the European settlers, and the home countries of those settlers, namely France and Great Britain. Historical ties to Britain. One of the major differences between Canada and the United States is Canada's long and enduring relationship with the United Kingdom. The British Queen, Elizabeth II, is the Canadian head of state. As you have read, the British government first created Canada when it passed the British North American Act. More than a century later, in 1982, Canada created its own constitution. It needed to address issues that were unique to Canada, such as language rights for French-speaking Quebec, financial support for the regional economies, and government protection of Canada's transportation and other industries. This constitution was called the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. It serves the same function as the American Bill of Rights, and it reflects Canada's slow separation from Britain. Like the Bill of Rights, Canada's Charter of Rights and Freedoms helps ensure that it remains a limited government. Canada's government system is a constitutional monarchy, where the power of the king or queen is limited by the Constitution. Canada's government is made up of three branches: the executive, legislative, and judicial. Sounds familiar, huh? Canada also uses a federal system to balance power between the federal government in Canada's capital city, Ottawa, and the governments in each of its provinces and territories. Heads of state. Canada's executive branch of government is made up of a Governor-General who represents the British monarch, currently Queen Elizabeth II of England, the Prime Minister, and the Cabinet. The Prime Minister is in charge of determining government policies and steering legislation in Canada, while the Queen's role is mostly ceremonial. Since 1952, the Governor-General position has alternated between an English Canadian and a French Canadian. By custom, the person appointed to this position is bilingual. The Prime Minister and the Cabinet are elected members of the House of Commons. The leader of the majority party in the House of Commons becomes Prime Minister. In this system, there are no divisions between the executive and the legislative branches of government in Canada, as there are in the United States. Citizens. The structure of Canada's government is designed to benefit its citizens, beginning with Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau. In the early 1970s, the government has continued to create programs to balance the needs of both French and English-speaking Canadians. Since then, people have focused more on celebrating Canada's multi-ethnic, multilingual, and multicultural population. Canadians, like Americans, live under a representative government. They have similar roles as American citizens. For example, Canadians vote in elections, pay taxes, and serve on juries. They also have similar rights, such as the rights to freedom of speech and worship. One area where citizens' rights are different is in terms of language. The Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms names French and English as official languages. It protects citizens' right to use and be educated in either language. The United States Constitution does not name an official language and does not discuss language rights. Canada's role in the world. Canada has a growing and dynamic economy based on natural resources, well-developed services, and technology. Canada's high-end internet system and well-educated workforce are particularly important to the country's economy. Canada is currently second in the world in terms of total internet users, despite its relatively small population. And it ranks first in the percent of college and university graduates of its total population. There are other reasons Canada has emerged as a world leader in economic development and trade. Along with its highly skilled population, Canada has a literacy rate of 99%, one of the highest in the world. Unemployment is low. Canada has developed a high quality of life, health care for every citizen, policies for cleaning up the environment, and a modern transportation system. Trade. Canada's trade network has been affected by political agreements with its nearest neighbor and most important trading partner, the United States. Passage of the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, in 1994, for example, eliminated all trade barriers between Canada, the United States, and Mexico. NAFTA legislation has resulted in more than $1 billion of goods crossing the Canadian-U.S. border each day. NAFTA, as well as Canada's active participation in the World Trade Organization, the WTO, has increased trade. More goods and services flow out of Canada, exports, and more goods and services flow into Canada, imports. Much of this international trade consists of exporting Canada's natural resources to other countries. Profits made by exporting natural resources make up 1/3 of Canada's economic activity. Peacekeeping. Canada is known throughout the world as a peacekeeping nation. Many Canadian soldiers, sailors, and aviators today work to stop wars from developing by serving the United Nations as peacekeepers. Peacekeepers go into other countries to help guard borders and protect people, not to fight battles. Recently, Canadian soldiers have provided support for United States troops in Afghanistan and Iraq. Some peacekeepers are not in the military, but help with negotiations between groups or provide other services in conflict areas. The United Nations, UN, was founded after World War II by 50 different countries, including Canada, to help encourage good global relations. Although more than 70 countries have participated in peacekeeping missions for the UN, Canada is among the leading countries in providing support to United Nations missions over the years. In addition, despite its small population, Canada is the fourth largest contributor to the high cost of maintaining the peacekeeping efforts of the UN. Canada has participated in nearly every United Nations peacekeeping mission since 1956. In that year, Egypt gained control of the Suez Canal, which connects the Mediterranean and Red Sea. Britain and France wanted to control the canal, which threatened war in Egypt. Canada's Lester Pearson proposed sending United Nations troops to limit fighting and find a peaceful resolution. Over the years, Canada has also sent troops and other officials to prevent conflict in places such as Haiti, Bosnia, the Dominican Republic, and Somalia. Canada's diverse cultures. Canada's population is a mix of Indigenous people, descendants of early colonizers from England and France, and immigrants from other countries. Although English and French are Canada's two official languages, Canada is a multicultural society, meaning a society made up of many cultures. Its distinctive cultural, ethnic, and racial groups are encouraged to maintain their own identities and cultures. Multiculturalism. While the United States is sometimes thought of as a melting pot, Canada is known as a cultural mosaic. Here, people from different areas retain their cultural identity. Mosaics are made up of different color stones that together form a picture. Similarly, Canada is made up of many different cultural groups that together form a society. It is a bilingual country with both French and English as national languages. Canada adopted an official policy of multiculturalism in the 1970s. Multiculturalism encourages Canadians to maintain the cultures and traditions of their parents and grandparents. Some Canadians support multiculturalism, while others oppose it. Supporters of multiculturalism point to the qualities they considered positive in multicultural societies. For example, they argue that multiculturalism exposes people to new ideas and experiences. They may learn different languages and come to understand different cultures. Supporters also argue that multiculturalism increases tolerance of different ethnic groups, races, and religion. Critics of multiculturalism stress qualities they consider negative about multicultural societies. They argue that multiculturalism emphasizes differences between ethnic groups. They do not believe it encourages Canadian unity. Others think that Canada is losing its national identity. Still, others think that maintaining many distinct cultural groups may lead to increased discrimination. Canadian immigrants. Canada has a long history of welcoming immigrants and refugees. In the 1800s, jobs to construct railroads and the availability of land created opportunities for citizens. Canada's population became more diverse after the 1960s when Canada changed its immigration laws. This increase in the racial diversity of Canada's immigrant groups has continued in recent years. In 2004, nearly half of all Canadian immigrants came from Asia and Pacific Rim countries. The presence of more people born in Asia, Latin America, and Africa has risen dramatically as economic, environmental, and political problems in the world continue. Today, the most diverse cities in Canada are its three largest: Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver. Toronto, Canada's largest city, is one of the world's most cosmopolitan and ethnically diverse metropolitan areas. More than half of all the school children in Toronto speak a language other than English at home. Along with the descendants of earlier European settlers, this city is now home to immigrants from Asia, Africa, the Caribbean, and Latin America. Other smaller cities also attract new immigrants. Immigrants account for 70% of all labor force growth in Canada, a proportion that experts project will grow to 100% in the next 10 years. Contributions and experiences of diverse groups. Canada has many diverse groups, including English and French speakers, First Nations, Inuit, and immigrant groups from all over the world. Each has made its own contributions to Canadian society. For example, English-speaking author Alice Munro won a Nobel Prize for Literature in 2013. French-Canadian singer Celine Dion is the best-selling female pop artist in the world. Filmmaker Zacharias Canuck produced and directed the first film entirely in Inuktitut, an Inuit language. Patrick Chan, an Asian Canadian figure skater, has set world records in his sport. Canada's diverse groups experience its multicultural society differently. English-speaking Canadians experience their society as its majority group. French speakers form the majority in Quebec, but a minority elsewhere. Inuit are a minority group in most of Canada, but a majority in the territory of Nunavut. In fact, Nunavut was created to give Inuit a greater voice in government. Canada's population and its history have led to different experiences for diverse groups. For example, French speakers in Quebec will find street signs and restaurant menus in their own language. French speakers in British Columbia may not. In the past, Chinese Canadians faced discrimination and had to pay a special tax. Today, they are one of Canada's largest minority groups. A higher percentage of Chinese Canadians have a college degree than Canadians generally. Cultural challenges. Maintaining a distinctive Canadian identity remains one of Canada's biggest challenges. American movies, television programs, and pop music flow easily into Canada and dominate its media. Efforts to curb the Americanization of Canadian culture include a law that requires that Canadian TV and radio programs contain a certain percentage of Canadian content. There has also been an explosion of Canadian fine arts, films, television, and popular music during the last 30 years that help carry on an identity and values that are uniquely Canadian. As Canada moves forward, its geography and the diversity of its people continue to be important to its future. Managing regional economic differences, maintaining independent foreign policies, protecting culture, and balancing trade and political relationships with the United States remain important.